once you've done your proposal and you've selected your guiding research question, you've started digging into all of your research and you've come up with sources, and now you're ready to write your paper. So now we have to figure out, how do we work with our sources and how do we organize our ideas so that when we go to write, we have a clear direction of where we're going and we know that we're going to be successful with our project. So one thing that you want to do before you delve into writing, you can kind of jump into writing. Some people do that and sometimes it works. But I will say, when you're working with sources, you do want to at least have a general idea of where you're going so that, again, you know where your sources kind of fit and what kind of sources you're looking for. This can also help you find gaps, for example, in your research. So doing some sort of outlining and organizing and thinking about how your sources are going to talk to each other is extremely beneficial. So think about how you can plan ahead. One way that you can do this is through the UWC's Visual Organizer. And so this will be on D2L for you. But this is essentially a way to kind of get your paper going. And you can actually use this for any type of project that has a general outline kind of component. So what you can do, you can jot down some introduction ideas. Sometimes introductions can be difficult to write. A lot of times I suggest skipping writing the introduction. How can you introduce your ideas if you don't know where you're going yet? So don't feel like you have to write the introduction first, but if you do have a general idea of how you want to start your paper, you could jot those down along with a working thesis statement. So after you have done a lot of reading and you know your sources really well, you may have your stance already in mind. This is excellent. So you may want to go ahead and jot down a general thesis statement. This can help guide you as you're writing those body paragraphs to make sure you know the direction that you want to stick to. You want to make sure that you are sticking to your thesis statement. So all your body paragraphs should support your thesis statement. Now, this is pretty simplistic, but honestly, it's a great way to make sure that you know where you're going. So your first body paragraph, anytime you're writing a paragraph, you want to make sure it's clear to your reader what that paragraph is about. So jot down your topic sentence, or at least your topic idea for this body paragraph, and then think about how you are going to support this idea. So your support might be, here's this reason, here's that reason, here's maybe source one's idea and why it's important, source two idea, however you want to think about that. But you want to make sure you're explaining why the information you're providing is important. And obviously you're going to have more than 3 paragraphs, so you could simply print out more of these handouts and jot this down. So this acts as a working outline for you. Now, you may not be into this guide, and if you're not, that's okay too. You can do an outline. And I'm not a big fan of super formal outlines. I'm just a little too messy for that, I guess. But it doesn't matter. If you want to do a very formal and, make sure if you have point A, you have point B, you have to write it all in sentences or all not in sentences, or however. You've probably heard rules about outlines before. Do what works for you. Here's an example of something I've actually written, an outline. It's a little more formal looking because, in this case, I kind of had to. But it works. This is typically what I do before I start writing anything. And again, like I told you guys, it usually looks a lot messier than this. What I want it to do is I kept my thesis at the very top, again, to remind me this is what I was trying to prove and write about. And then I kind of broke it down into different sections. So in this particular paper, I had introduced the problem. I jotted down a few sources that I knew connected with these ideas. And then these were the ideas that I wanted to write about in those sections. And you can see here, I kind of broke it down again into what I was going to write about. So for example, if I'm going to talk about the impact on the pandemic, on women in the U.S., women workers in the U.S., I might talk about the economic impact. I already knew kind of what that meant. So there were already pre-existing inequalities. I have some source work to go with that I know fits with that idea. I'm going to talk about unemployment, and I'm going to talk about the she-cession, which is the idea of women having to leave the workforce, maybe because of things like childcare. And so you can see how I kind of just broke this down. Sometimes, again, I might do it a little less formal. So, for example, I might just say number one, I want to talk about, it's trying to, I hate when it does that. Let's start a new document really quickly just to show you. I might say, here's my working thesis. Idea number one is X, and idea number two is Y, and I'm going to go so on and so forth. And then I might type out my ideas here again. And you see that's kind of the same thing here, but sometimes I might even just put in a link or, whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be super duper formal, but just having something to work with here is going to be really important to kind of have an idea of where to go. Okay, let me get that back to normal. So this might help you. You need to do something here so that you can make sure that you're organized and you know where you're going. All right, I wanted to go to this next. So this is something else that may kind of help you as far as seeing your sources and how they talk to each other. And then how do you kind of combine that with your own personal ideas, your own key takeaways, your own focus after you've done all this reading. So a T-chart may actually help you in this case as far as organizing your sources and how they talk to each other. So as you can see on the left side of the screen, this is a key idea that I have after doing my research. So I believe that, and again, I'm using this hypothetically. Let's say I believe that attracting quality teachers is key to a successful education system, and the United States needs to do this better. We should demand prepared teachers, but we should reward them somehow for this excellence. So that's my idea. All right, because your voice has to be present in this paper. One of the issues I typically see with argumentative writing on a research-based paper is sometimes students only put the sources and their voice isn't present at all. Or the other way around, it's only their voice and they don't have enough sources to support them and back them up. You have to have a balance. So I wrote my idea over here on the left. And then on the right, okay, what sources did I read that kind of talk about this idea? And this could be jotted down in quick note-like, in a quick note-like way. Obviously, if it's a source, I want to at least put their name, maybe the date somewhere in there. It may not be a perfect little citation or internal citation, but maybe like here I wrote that this was an NPR article I found with the author's name. And then I wrote down what stood out to me from that quote. So in this case, and go back to your idea of they say, I say, the reading we did at the beginning of the semester. So I found a source that agrees with me, and this source said, in this source it said it's about having high quality teachers. For example, daycare teachers have bachelor's degrees in Finland, I guess, was what I read from this article. So I'm like, okay, so I can use this source and this idea to support this idea over here. I also found another source that kind of agreed with me. So in other words, I found an article from NCEE, and it said that pay is not the answer. So in other words, they agree that rewarding is important, but pay is not the main thing. So they say this is a cultural problem. You want to have create a culture of respect for teachers and make sure that they have really high standards in the teacher prep program. All right, well, that's kind of going with rewards, but they're saying that pay may not be the only answer. So it's kind of agreed, disagreed. I might be able to work that into that paragraph. So setting up a T-chart for your main points may help you see what you say and then whether your sources agree or disagree, and you can work with them from there. So that might help you with this. I also wanted to show you what this might look like in a paper. I think I've moved off the page I wanted to show you guys. Let's see if I can find it. And we'll come back to this a little bit later. This is a good page to kind of show you sources talking to each other. So I say, for example, this source explains an idea about rigor. And then I also say, this source reminds me about having rigor. Or like here I say, this person explains this concept. And then I say, these researchers add to this idea. So you can see in these two paragraphs, and even within this, they call upon another person's work. So you can kind of see how there's several sources in each paragraph that have to kind of speak to the same idea. So I thought that might help you guys. All right, I am actually going to end this video, and I want to make sure that you check out the concepts of citing this week. It's important to keep up with your sources as you work. That's why, for example, in this outline, I made sure that any point that I knew that connected to a source, you want to go ahead and throw those in there, because as you're writing, you want to keep up with who is saying what. You don't want to get to the end of your paper and have it written but didn't put in the sources, didn't put in any citations, and then you don't know where it comes from and you accidentally do the bad thing, the plagiarism word, where you didn't cite where information came from. So it's really, really important that you keep up with all of this as you write your paper.